Today we're going to be using opacity and transparencies in PowerPoint. This is going to help guide the audience's eyes to the right place on the screen at the right time.
So let's say this is just a screenshot from the Dell Dam. And let's say I wanted to get the user or the learner to focus on these three buttons up here. One of the ways that we could do this is by, drawing a box around the area we want them to focus on and highlighting that area, maybe changing the background of box, getting rid of the fill and putting a highlight around it and saying, hey, look here. And I've also seen people use arrows to say, look here, But we don't need to do that, okay? Let me give you a quick example of something that really works well. And this is using opacities, okay? So I'm just going to highlight these areas with different boxes here. Let me copy that, put this one down here. I'm going to just draw these boxes out here, just like this, nothing crazy. And I'm just going to cover up these areas here, okay? And now what I have is just all of the areas I don't want them to really focus on covered up. And then this area here is the area we want them to focus on. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the shape fill to a white, okay? And then I'm going to get rid of the outline. So let's say no outline. So now what I got is I have this large area that looked like this, covered with all these white boxes, okay? And I'm going to take and I'm going to select each one of these white boxes. And I am going to go into shape fill. And I'm going to go into more fill colors. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my transparency to 20%. I find that that's a good roundabout number. And when I hit OK, what happens is I get this opacity layer on top of everything. So what that's doing is it's saying, hey, the UI is still there, but I want you to look at that. So rather than putting a box around it with an arrow saying, look here, I can get that same effect by using opacity, by covering up the parts of the screen that I really don't want the learner to focus on. Another good example of that is, let's say I have 4 images here, and I want to talk about each one separately on the next coming pages. So what I'll do with that is I might duplicate this slide a couple of times, right? Let's say 4 times. What I can do is I might have this opening image with all 4. And then what I'll do is I'll go into my next image, okay? And I'm gonna draw a box around the ones I don't want to see, just like I did in the other one. I'm gonna copy that box and I'm gonna put it over all the other pieces, okay? And I can just select these all at once, and I can go into my shape fill. I'm gonna make them all white. I'm gonna get rid of that outline again, okay? This guy, missed him. Get those little edges that are hanging off. And then once again, grab all of them, go into my more fill colors, and then I'm going to bring those up to 20%. Okay, so those are dulled down, and we're talking about this guy right now. So we have an overall image. We say, hey, we introduce all these images, and then we go into here, and we're saying, all right, now we're talking about this one. And in this effect, we can also put in an overlay here that has the information about that, And then if I duplicate this, and we want to go onto this slide, maybe we're talking about this guy now, and I just shift one of those over. So now we go, here's our overall image. Here's the one we want to focus on this slide. Here's the one we want to focus on this slide, etc. So this is just another way of using opacity to get the learner to focus on what we're talking about at the time. But having those faded out in the background keeps the learner's attention on knowing what we're talking about, right? So we're not jumping from one thing to another. If I go from a slide like this, and then the next slide might have just this image really highlighted and over here in a corner in a different place, then they might lose track of where they were when we first introduced these 4 different components, okay? But having them all in the same place keeps a consistent look and feel going throughout, and it reminds them of the overall image that we started to talk about.
So that's a quick tip on using opacity and transparency in PowerPoint to get the learner to focus on the right area on the screen. Check back with You're the Designer to find more tips.